This episode brought to you by sleeveless shirts, because it's hot finally. Welcome to the Portal Gun Podcast. Hi, Isaac Mason.
Hi, Jeff Wilson.
And we are here to discuss, this is episode number 9, one episode bigger than number 8.
And one less than number 10. And we're coming up on double digits on you, motherfuckers.
Boom, double digits. We are here to talk about, not that. That's it. That's the end of the
episode.
Promortyus,
Yes.
which had aired a little bit ago.
What does Promortyus mean, Jeff? What does that even?
So I'm assuming it's a reference to that movie Prometheus.
Which are you a fan of it? Are you a fan of the Alien series?
I'm not a fan. I'm just not.
Right.
I'm not there.
I appreciated the subtle nod to the cult following of that, and it was an interesting episode. But tell us about the rest of the details of it.
Well, I had missed the whole Alien train. I understand it's important,
right,
in the film universe. You know, Alien with
of course. Director, who was it?
Ridley Scott.
Yeah, with Sigourney Weaver,
who's done a ton of stuff.
They really, in all honesty, as a person who follows a lot of H.R. Giger, who inspired the Xenomorph, which is the proper name for the alien. I really grasp towards that. I gravitate towards that kind of influence. But like you said, I'm not just an overly huge fan, but it was cool to see them once again explore another avenue of cult fascination and following. Yeah,
and I think that's, sci-fi. It's gonna be, you throw that, Rick and Morty, I think, is just like embodiment of science fiction.
Right.
So any outlet like that's gonna be really cool. And it's going to work well with the episode. Mm-hmm. So, like, if they wanted to do something else, some other sci-fi movie or some other film or some TV show, I think they could reference virtually anything that they wanted to. So that's cool.
Yeah, so we talked about last episode. We talked about how Love Ness had the first one of these last 5, and he's got the first 3 of these last 5 episodes, correct?
So this is something he wrote also. Directed by Brian Newton, who had directed a ton of episodes before, had also done some storyboard work and was on the animation department for the pilot.
Okay.
So Brian Newton has been here since day one. Yeah,
literally. And that makes that final scene where they actually make a meta reference in the episode to the pullback to the plot. I think Rick says the plot comes full circle.
Yeah, now it's
pilot.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess right off the bat, the episode, it wasn't as crazy or intense as the first episode of the last 5. So I think that's good. I don't think you need to be totally over the top all the time.
Yeah, you can't. It can't be a blockbuster every time. Were you disappointed that? We talked loosely off camera about the linear factor of this, or the canonical experience of this episode. So, do you think episode 1 was non-canonical? Or how do you think it plays into the linear story of it? Do you think it was one of those off episodes that really don't have continuity?
I think every so often, like I said, we talked about there being like a clip style show.
The Morty's Mind Blowers, and so that was that episode.
Interdimensional Cable.
Okay.
And, we talked about them having one of those types of episodes, and how well they can still work no matter where you're at in the season, wherever you're at in the arc.
True.
Having something like that happen is actually, it still works for them. It still works on a good level.
They make it work even with the subtle changes that they make. 2 interdimensional cables, a Morty's Mind Blower. Now season 4, we've got this episode. So I don't know. Would you have rather had 2 more interdimensional cable episodes, or are you pleased with the deviation and creativity with these Morty's Mind Blowers and this episode?
Well, I think
episode 1 before this one.
On the surface, I'm pretty sure that it's popular. Like, the idea of interdimensional cable is very popular amongst the fandom, and people know that. So, I think the creators are kind of toying, like, okay, we know this is something that people like. We're not going to give it to them exactly. We're going to reference it again, 2 episodes each now. We were 2 episodes in, and they've referenced interdimensional cable.
And for as many people as I feel like appreciate these episodes, I think there's a percentage of the audience who are disappointed that there weren't interdimensional cable 3 and 4. You know, and honestly, I'm not one of those people, but I would as equivalently enjoyed an interdimensional cable 3 and 4. But I'm glad that they took a creative spin to take these in a different direction. But that was the first episode with Story Train, right? And the Time Lord. And stuff like that.
Never Rick and Morty.
And this episode opens up. What's this one called? Yeah, Promortyus.
Yeah.
And right off the rip, the opening scene is. Rick and Morty, do they wake up with these the face huggers on their?
So this is another cool thing about it being like the non-linear storytelling, that
Okay.
it starts basically in the middle of the story, which is something, Tarantino is always big on doing something non-linear.
And then pulls back into it later.
And then it goes,
in
oh,
the
how do
episode.
we get here? Oh,
Yeah.
let's go back to it. So the episode opens up with them walking with the face huggers on their face, like they're just walking, and then Morty's gets trapped by something that's in the cave, and then it just falls off.
And he seems to realize as soon as that thing detaches, so
he's
he
like, oh crap, yeah. So
he pulls Rick's off of his face, and Rick
Yeah.
realizes that they are actually infected by the parasite that is the face hugger.
And then they have no idea what has happened in the last couple days or
Since
weeks.
it attached to their face.
And then, so
this is where it's confusing for me, though. The episode seems to follow from that point in time forward, and they end up basically off the planet after a lot of stuff happens, and then the way that they revisit it makes me wonder where in the plot line why they decided to. I guess I'm trying to gather my thoughts here as I talk about it. In order for the story of Summer to come back in, the way they end up forgetting about her later on, we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But they come back. It was confusing to me how the continuity of the episode actually tracks for understanding, because part of me still didn't understand how Summer got into the equation and how she played into the escape of it, because there were two different scenes. Remember the first episode where Summer was in the ship listening to the podcast, and then they came back and left again. So I'm confused as to which one of those two scenes were the real one, or if they were both referentially solid for the episode. Did we just see the first scene of her playing the podcast in the back of the ship, and the second scene
they talk about, her listening to the podcast is whatever, and because they didn't let her listen to the podcast, they actually ended up going on this like distress planet and doing all this other stuff.
Okay.
Because she's got the toothpick, and that's how she survives the face hugger.
But was it ever established why they went there initially? Here's where I'm confused, and I'm glad that my brain worked with me in this moment of mental lapse to put it all back together. Were they there originally because they forgot Summer, or were they there originally because they went there as an overall deviated goal? To me, it was never established why they were on this alien planet.
Yeah, that's true.
But the whole episode is about having to go back to it once they were already there.
Yeah. So how they got there with Summer initially, like what was the initial mission?
Right. That's not clear, right?
Not really, and I think it's just like something that they're just doing.
And I'm okay with the origin of that story. I'm okay with that not being there, in terms of the episode basing itself off of calling back to itself later on when they forget her.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what happens when they have to go all the way back, and they look at what they've done and like, oh crap, this is actually the world that we were, and they had to put the fake or the dead face huggers on there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting chronological following of those series of events, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, in terms of like production, I think it's great. Like I said, the story is very interesting. It's not as over the top or like crazy as Never Rick and Morty was, but I still think it was interesting enough with the non-linear storytelling, because Summer actually gets to be kind of the protagonist.
And I feel like there's about 1 or 2 episodes per season that whether it's Jerry or Beth or Summer, they selectively choose which certain episodes to involve other characters in. So I feel like the one with wasn't Summer involved in the dragon episode, and was that the first 5 of season 4?
Yeah,
that dragon episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would be like the second episode of Summer's involvement this season, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think like she does get to be the hero of that episode too.
Right.
But this way she's kind of doing everything on her own. And once again, the big deal with this is obviously that we kind of saw is that they're making Rick and Morty. You can see from their perspective that they're the bad guys, And that's kind of what I like.
Especially like you said, once they come back and see the damage they've done. They're there for a valiant mission to save Summer again, but they didn't even know they were there the first time and literally forgotten her. until which another callback to another one of our episodes when we talked about the upcoming other 5 of season 4. You finally got to see Jerry's own honey.
Yeah. So I also want to call back like the predictions. Everyone's predictions of what was happening with the honey. Totally wrong.
Right,
no one would have guessed in a million. Which is another reason why I have to give it up for this show and the writers is that when you look at that preview, like that breakdown that we had saw, the trailer, it's like everyone is talking about, oh my gosh, this is going to be something crazy. The
major plot point.
Yeah, the Glorzo planet was actually rumored, or people were theorizing that was inside Jerry's honey bottle.
I did not see that.
Yeah, so that was like, I think they're gonna actually go like shrink down and go inside his honey bottle, and that's what they're destroying. And it sounded a little outrageous, but with something that's even more outrageous and not at the same time is, Jerry has honey because he's a beekeeper.
Which is
just something
which
so
tracks
simple
along with the wildness of the show.
Yeah, and I'm just like, God, that is so both outrageous and not outrageous at all at the same time.
Very, very telling
and
of the
fits
character.
in that line, in that little space of, this is how we can blow people's minds and not at the same, like,
give them what they expect, but also what they do.
You guys saw a bottle of honey on the table in the trailer, and now we think it's some giant wild adventure, and it's not. It's
really Jerry's a beekeeper.
Jerry's a beekeeper,
which plays in for a very good. I don't know if you would call it a cult following, but another classic homage to the big blockbuster hits. Rick and Morty is really good at giving very subtle nods to popularized culture over time, whether it be from the 70s, 80s, 90s, recent times. This was, if you've never seen the movie American Beauty, the end of the scene referenced the obsession of one character in American Beauty for another, the main character's dad. So that was, I told you Family Guy does the same thing. So here we have another show referencing something that, and also they're just for as many references as I am, as I have familiarity for, there's another set that I don't, right?
Yeah.
So if I had never seen American Beauty, I wouldn't know that it was from that, but I don't think that would have taken away from the funniness of this character just going on about how she wants to fuck Jerry.
Yeah.
And that's what's funny too, nobody likes Jerry.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, like, with this episode, I'm glad Jerry finally gets his due, bro. He finds a hobby, and everyone kind of just doesn't care about it, which is typical. But but
he's still about it.
He still does it, and then he gets some love at the end finally.
Yeah, tell us about the special note in that scene that you noticed for the relative continuity for the series.
So and that's what I once again have to give it up to the writers or the art department, because the continuity of, if you show the picture, we have the screen cap.
We'll put it up here.
The bodies are buried in the backyard.
You can see the outline of the graves
from when they effectively killed themselves.
What season was that?
Back in season 1. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I love that they still can sprinkle in those little details.
So subtle.
And yeah, it is very subtle. Jerry's getting a good rap finally, even though nobody cares that he's a beekeeper. And yeah, I think it's all in all, I think, like I said, stuff like that is really enjoyable. Jerry doesn't need his own whole, even like a whole arc to try and like rectify whatever his reputation was.
Right.
I feel like we got a little bit of those weird moments when him and Beth were split up.
And also, I think subtly,
Last season.
The way they've been telling Jerry's story is not, and he's trying to redeem himself as the fixture of a father figure within a family, but he's also trying to find himself as who Jerry is, and I think that's overly relatable to, the Jerrys of the world, if you may.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting, but let's talk about the political correctness of this episode. So there were some references about the damage they did to the city.
Yeah.
In this, and what were the two things they were comparing for terrible political correctness to reference?
So yeah, and that's apparently I've read some articles that there's some backlash to that, but I haven't seen anything.
As I was watching it, I was like, they're gonna catch some flack for this.
Yeah. So like maybe I think the only people who are giving them flack are actually people that don't watch the show on a regular basis.
I can believe that.
Having the dark humor is just a part of what the show is. Obviously, there is like a political correctness layer to it, but I read there was a couple articles showing up on like Twitter or something that said Rick and Morty fans are backlash because the show, the 9/11 joke, and I have seen nothing about backlash. Like, I've seen nothing negative about that episode at all from any of the fans online.
It's all about the communities you're a part of, man. Like, anybody who was affected negatively or adversely about this episode is I can't imagine. Either they have people they know who died in 9/11. Like I can only imagine people who were actually offended by this episode had some kind of either relative relation to Pearl Harbor or 9/11.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, being somebody who I know nobody who was in 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, it didn't offend me at all. I realized it was a test of the waters for the political correctness of where the edginess of the episode could go.
Yeah, and like I said, people who are going to get mad about it probably don't watch the show anyway.
They would have gotten mad at something, whether it was that or not.
Yeah, and I think like if you don't watch the show anyway, you still don't have to watch it. Like it's not like you're forced to watch it and then have to put up with something that you don't want to put up
subjected
with.
yourself to this.
So there was that, and then I'm reading online also people just think it was a huge 30-minute setup so Rick could shit on the floor at the end. So and really come full circle.
And honestly, until we talked about it pre-episode, I honestly did not make the connection of getting Swifty.
Yeah.
And shitting on the floor. I think I found it more rewarding that they called back the pilot episode.
Yeah.
But honestly, it could have been even better called back if they would have actually had to shove something else up their butt. Which is weird, but I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation we could get off on. Is the the biological aspect of parasite and host that this episode is talking about. There's not much interesting to follow in that measure, except for I think they were trying to portray Glorzo as this unseeable, unmeasurable force that societies have on themselves, whether it be kind of some basically whatever country you're a part of, whatever democracy or society or government you're a part of, that government is a leech on your face. You are glory to whatever freedoms and subsets of archetypes and legalities that you have over you. You are subject to the society you are a part of. And I think that's what they were trying to portray, but they were doing it through a facesucker alien meta, or not meta, so to say, but they were trying to say this society was overarchingly ruled by Glorzo, which was what they all call each other, right? Glorzo was the community, it was the facehuggers, it was the whole town and everything, right?
Yeah.
But
glory to Glorzo.
That's and honestly, I guess I'm talking about this because I have picked up I've picked up Glorzo as my new religion.
Gotcha. Okay, good. So
glory to Glorzo, and that's
confirmed.
I'm offering my sacrifice after this episode. So
there you go. Cool.
Next time I'll have an alien.
So there you go. In case you guys were interested in joining, we're starting the Glorzo podcast. Every podcast, I think we should try to start a new podcast.
I think so.
So every episode we got to talk about something else.
Potential spinoffs.
Yeah, and be like, hey, let's start this podcast.
It's a jumping off point for many, many things.
The podcast. Mm-hmm. Let's start a podcast about podcasts.
Yeah, the best idea I've ever heard.
I guess my final thought on the episode here, something that I really liked was that when they were flying and escaping Glorzo, they were tearing it up, and then Morty kind of mentioned about how it was a little bit evil to do that, and why did we go back to this planet, and then Rick talked about how he doesn't do sequels, and then talks about the Purge planet and all this other stuff, and then says I don't do sequels, and I think that's so funny to be. It's a funny line for him to say all in all, but it's funny because it's like a self-realized, like, the writers don't want to do another episode of something they've already done.
Exactly, but they are almost feel pressured to, because of the popularity demand of how good these certain episodes were, and that's something I guess I can sympathize with, even though creative endeavors aren't my main pursuit in life. If you make an episode and you had no anticipation to make a sequel, certainly it's going to make it even harder when people want a sequel and you're like, I that's all I had. Like that's what I had for this episode, but suddenly you're at the behest of a community demanding more out of something that you already gave your worth for. And I think that's where certain screenwriters, screenplays, directors, creators run themselves into the ground trying to appease their audience. And I think Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland have figured out an extremely objective timeline for people to be pleased by the episodes that they give people and how they satisfy them both canonically, non-canonically, and that's why what is there 4 episodes left of this season?
3.
I think these last 3 episodes are going to be a payoff to what people haven't gotten yet out of these episodes.
Yeah,
because we've got our Interdimensional Cable episode. We've got some meta references. And I don't know. I just it excites me to think of what people could end up what they could end up coming at us with for the last 3 episodes. And anybody who's been disappointed thus far through season 4, I think they may get their payoff in these last 3.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think something else that was commented online here is talks about how the show is getting weirder and weirder, but it's like a good thing.
It is.
I think that it's a new way to try and keep episodes fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And still, you don't have to follow a direct plot line. You can still keep it fresh, and it's still getting weird. So it's like, I think it's just gonna keep growing, and I think it's gonna keep evolving. And the fact, once again, it's self-realized about what the show could be and what the show was and what it is to many people, and they use that to like pretty much dictate how they want to write and record the episodes, and I like that a lot.
And like we said before, the way they give episodes to characters in a certain way to realize themselves. I feel like this. The last 2 have been Summer realizing, and the dragon one and this one are Summer realizing themselves, Jerry realizing themselves, and there are but seemingly the episodes where Rick and Morty themselves are the one who make progress within their personality. Those are the pillars of the episodes. Like, when do the main characters, Rick and Morty, actually make those realizations about themselves, and how I've talked about how shitty Rick actually is as a person and how no one would want him as a friend, but meanwhile he's the best friend of his grandson who has no one else also. But suddenly they're locked in step to these experiences, and they only have each other, and they have this family. And I think that's what's overly relatable to this whole entire series is the small circle that you keep. Everybody keeps self-realizing over time. And that's why I'm never not entertained with Rick and Morty, because they seem to, if they don't try to develop the story, they try to develop the characters. And I appreciate character development.
Yeah. And I think that's, once again, you got to give credit to the creatives that are responsible for doing this.
And shout out to Jeff Loveness and the people who write these episodes, who write some kind of social commentary into it, whether it be Glory Be to Glorzo or the episode where Rick had his fantasy shitting land. Like, I'm a How I Met Your Mother fan, and there's an episode about Marshall going into, every day he goes to read a magazine in the bathroom. But everybody knows when he takes a magazine with him to the bathroom, he's going to go take a shit. Like, There are these things that you can write into the show that are relatable outside of the actual narrative. I don't know. But do we have any other exciting news or anything upcoming for the show or for the series?
I did. So the next episode it's airing, it's going to be episode 8, right. The Vat of Acid episode. So
now here is a big question for me, dude. I'm glad you brought that up. Here's what I don't believe. Here's a lot of my complication. Okay, let me readjust myself. So for episode 6 of this other 5, that was the story train episode that was supposed to be Interdimensional Cable, right?
Yep.
That's supposed to be non-canonical and continuous, right?
Pretty much.
How can? Here's my question: how can they have advertised that but treated that episode like an Interdimensional Cable or like a non-linear story? But there was a very particular plot point where the guy was like, at least get in, at least get the acid vat ready to redo again or whatever. So that episode of the story train seemed to have story elements in it involving that vat of acid that's going to come back to another episode, which is really the source of my confusion for the connecting narrative of what we seem to think Interdimensional Cable. But also, as I say this, I realize Interdimensional Cable is real in the universe of Rick and Morty. Yeah. They sit down on the TV and watch that. So even though that Interdimensional Cable narrative doesn't play into the narrative of Rick and Morty that we watch, it's a real narrative in the characters of the show. So somehow they've managed to take this idea of these episodes and write them into another episode, but here they're going to call back to it. And I think they could make a really epic tie-in for the Interdimensional Cable and the way that they use the portal gun in all of these places. And that's why I think maybe that story train episode wasn't really what we thought it was.
Yeah, and like I said, having the anthology episode, we talked about it in the last podcast, It was episode 6 of the season, and usually they do an anthology episode 8, which is getting aired next. So
we've got 6 and 7 now. Next is 8.
Yeah. So usually, like I said, in all the 3 seasons that have been out, the 8th episode in each of those seasons have been the anthology episodes.
You just made me realize this 8th episode may tie in an epic way.
So we'll see.
That could be awesome.
That acid episode. I do want to make a bold prediction right now.
All right, let's hear it.
Trisha, who wants to bang Jerry,
okay,
will bang Jerry. Jerry will have an affair with Trisha by the end of this season.
Okay.
Trisha will be working for Evil Morty.
That's bold, sir. That's bold.
Yes. Trisha will also be a part of the Evil Morty. Because I think they're going to bring him back by the time the season's over.
They can't not.
And because of that.
Now, I'm going to make a bold, off of your prediction, I'm going to make one. It makes me think of the lack of inclusion of Tammy and Birdman.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, in a not perverse universe, but maybe demented one, maybe Tammy comes back and Birdman comes back, and it's some kind of, can you see an Evil Morty versus Rick scenario?
I don't know if they'd really do that.
If they could separate that, yeah. And it's only because, what benefit does it do Jerry, other than his character arc to actually bang a teenage girl? But, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens.
I guess I feel like one or two things going to happen.
Okay.
He's either actually going to do it, like he's actually going to have an affair with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
because they left it as a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Like, they left it as something to ponder.
Or he's going to get presented with the opportunity and decline.
Okay.
Because he loves Beth, and then they're going to make fun of him for it.
Yeah, of course.
One or two things are going to happen. I feel like it's going to be brought back again. But that is my bold prediction, and that Trisha will be working for the Galactic Federation, like Tammy. And
that's where my brain was going to. I'm going to make a prediction to say Birdman and Tammy will be in the next episode in some kind of capacitive manner that continues where they left off and where the rest of the season is going. But quick question, how many episodes did they renew the contract for Cartoon Network? 70?
Yeah.
So we've gotten not even 10 of that 70, right?
Yeah, it's another 7 or 8 seasons. So
10 and that's what's crazy, man. It hurts my brain to sit here and talk about this episode and know we've got 60 more to talk about. Yeah. In a good way, in a really good way.
So, yep. That's my bold prediction. It's going to be airing next, the Vat of Acid episode. I think it's going to be something that's kind of in the same line, the same vein as being kind of meta, because they think when, even the Claw and Hoarder, the Dragon episode, it was called, the Dragon episode. And I think this will be one of those episodes that they categorize as something like, okay, we got to hit this, we got to check this box now. We did a Vat of Acid episode. This is what's going to happen. And then there's going to be a crazy B plot that really wasn't in the last episode. There really wasn't a crazy, outlandish B plot in Promortyus, really.
No, not so much. Other than I would say it was thrown in at the end.
Yeah.
They chose to, instead of exploring any kind of B plot, they chose to throw it in at the end of the narrative and be like cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Some Rick and Morty have very final endings. Some episodes have a lot of closure. A lot of others don't, and that's what I honestly love about the medium of TV, is because if you do episodic installments, you can flex that kind of creative capacity, whether you want to leave an episode off on a cliffhanger or complete some kind of story arc narrative with it. You'll be equally enticed. It'll feel real good when you get finished watching it and you complete some kind of sufficient knowledge that you had about the episode and the story itself, or you'll be like, I can't wait to watch this next episode.
Yeah.
So you feel good either way, whether it leaves you cliffhanging or whether it completes that arc for you. And Rick and Morty does it very, very well.
Yep. And I guess we'll just have to see. Yeah.
That sounds good. Well, we're recording this on the 17th. We've got right?
Yes.
So the new episode comes out tonight.
Tonight.
We're recording. We're a little bit late, but we choose to do that because a lot of other outlets and YouTube channels, they record the day of
The night of.
The night of,
like,
exactly.
Within 4 hours of the episode airing, there's a fully produced.
And for as self-aware as we are of our podcast and what we talk about, we don't want to overdo it. And I feel like a lot of people take away from what they end up posting because they're trying to get to it too quick. We're bringing you guys the topics and stuff as we've thought about them, as we've sat on them, probably with you as well. You might have watched it when it came out and you haven't watched it since. You've maybe thought about it a little bit, but
we need time to digest.
Exactly. You got to give it time to do that.
We're not robots.
So that's what we're doing. This is a Rick and Morty digest podcast.
Yeah. We're not robots. We don't have anything scripted, ready to go.
Yeah, typical episode. Shout out to all of our other Rick and Morty fans.
Rick and Morty podcast companion has started back up. So
Rick and Morty Minute. We got the Squanch, Interdimensional RSS. Shout out to everyone else talking about Rick and Morty because we're all very excited about it right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of content. There's a lot of. I mean, now that the episodes are coming on, people are excited. The brand is alive and well. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff to dive into if you're into diving.
And I am a swimmer, sir.
Yes,
but I'm also a skydiver. So
yeah, skydiving.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else we wanted to mention before we sign off for the episode?
Where can you hear this exact recording?
I know that you can find this episode on YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. All those links are going to be, if not up on screen, in the description below. Please check us out on those. Feel free to email us at the Gmail episode on screen. If you have questions, comments, or anything you want to share with us, please contact us if you are watching and have anything to say. We appreciate the interaction. It seems like, based on our Podbean stats, we've got a little bit of traffic. Not to feel too famous, but I think somebody in Germany or the UK may be listening to us. If not, you have a VPN and you have us fooled because I think that you're British.
And if you are listening to us, give us a shout out.
Yes,
give us a comment.
If you are from Honduras or Great Britain or wherever you're from, let us know if you're listening because that's a very wholesome feeling. So wherever you're reporting in from, please feel free to shoot us any kind of email, Twitter, any kind of mention. We will appreciate it greatly more than you realize.
Booyah.
But that's awesome. This has been the Portal Gun Podcast, episode 9, title to be determined. But I am Isaac Mason.
And I am Jeff Wilson.
And we'll see you guys in the portal.
Gundam suits.
Activated. Blast off.
Schleem.
Awesome.